Morning, Robert.
Oh, the town clerk reminded all of us to bring along that. It's a copy of the agenda, etc. Now, I will admit that I left my side of the way out. I brought the chain and forgot my folder, but it'd be easy for the bring along. They are being held out to us now. I'd like to welcome everybody. It is probably question time, right? So we've got anybody attending on the Zoom or anything, Gary?
Oh, we wish to.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So, moving speedily along, apologies for absence. We have, do you want to announce it?
I have to apologies from Councillor Lizzo was away, Councillor Watford was working, and Councillor Delphi was on well.
Thank you. Please accept those apologies. Can I have a second? And the next item on the agenda is item 3, to receive any declarations of personal or pecuniary interest, then to set budget of the council tax precept. The council has a dispensation. All the interests have been made earlier, therefore you need not make declaration again, and you can vote on the budget book in its entirety. If any elements of the budget are, however, discussed where interests do come back into play, e.g. if someone wants to discuss the CN grant, then those with interest will be to have a meeting, leave the meeting for the duration of discussion and vote. So, I don't believe anybody has anything. Thank you. The next item is item number 4, to approve the minutes of the 10th of January meeting for accuracy. Does anybody have anything you'd like to bring up on those? I propose the next item. Anybody anything you want to bring up? In which case, can I show up? So accept. Thank you. Town has announcements. I would like to advise that further to this council's submission to the boundary commission on the 26th of October 21, the Mid Sussex District Council will consider a review of these things in that council with a view of reducing the council from a current size of 16 councillors. This will be in line with the Head Council and will be an overall reduction of 3 from 19 The proposal is to be evenly spread over wards. This is going to be the first set of meetings at Mid Sussex on the 2nd of February, with the intention of completing the review in time to implement the 2023 elections. This is just for noting at this time. Councillors are aware that the proposals before the boundary commission suggest realigning and creation of 2 new wards at Town Hall, the overall reduction of 2 district councillors and 1 district ward. We will watch with interest how this unfolds public consultation. I will also refer to the mayoral list between October and now. This is tabled. These are the things that have been involved in this process. On your behalf. Has everybody got a copy of this? Is anybody, would anybody like to comment on any part of it? I would like to say that obviously I really enjoyed the number of people who came along to my son's memorial match this year. It was particularly poignant to me. It was terrifically popular, as indeed Councillor Whittaker always is every year. And it was a particularly lovely time for everybody, especially young people. you've seen all the things there. I will just comment that this morning, I went to Saturday School to do a talk on our roles as councillors and also the town. Try to encourage them. It was a bit of it was a bit of a walk down memory lane for me, because I used to work in it was a particularly lovely time to work on your people. So, anybody else want anything you'd like to raise on there? Ask me any questions about Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. As you raised Sacco, I understand Sacco has a new head teacher,
Yes.
who's a lady, and I just wondered if usual protocol for the town council to invite her when it's convenient to
I think that's lovely.
to come up to his school and meet the town clerk.
Yes, I think that's lovely.
Become familiar with his school as they're very close neighbours.
Yes, let's do that. Yeah. Be happy with that. Great. Great. Town leader, any matters the leader wishes to lay before the council? Over to you, Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chairman. Before we get into before I come to the budget, I would just like to highlight that we're soon this year heading towards, or next year heading towards the elections in May 23, and this year we probably we will be going on the campaign trail later on. But I would like to take this opportunity just to highlight what this town council has achieved, especially this last year and previous years. We continue to listen to our residents and listen to their concerns. St Margaret's Loop is nearer to being finalised, and we're hoping that will come to fruition soon. St Barnabas Church, as you all know, we was looking to purchase that from the church, but obviously we've got to wait till the figures come in for that before we can proceed. And of course, we're now coming out of the pandemic, but it's been quite stressful when it was first came out, and we actually set up the East Wixley Emergency Action Group to deliver food and prescriptions to all our residents, all our vulnerable residents, and working with some of our partners to achieve that. And that's been a huge success. And this, I think, we've got to be so proud of ourselves for what we've done to achieve that for our residents in this town. Of course, I think a lot of people have actually missed our Easter live events. I think recently, last year, we had about 600 people in soaking wet, rather wet, but 600 people come out there and just would not give up. That's a testament to the popularity of Easter. And this year is planned to go back to having our Easter lives on the first Sunday in June, July and August. And of course, the first Sunday in June coincides with some of our Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all our members here, the committee members, the chairman, that worked so hard this last year to make this town council a success, and of course the town clerk and all the staff, and all the backroom staff that actually work with to do it without them. So big thank you to all of them. And of course, you know, above all, this town council will and always will, as long as we're in charge, support our community grants. That is so important. There's so many voluntary organisations in the town, and without the little support that we can give them, they probably would not be able to carry on. So I think that is again a testament to how this town council operates. I think we should be very proud of ourselves. Now I'll come to the budget, and I'm reading this out for the benefit. You've all got this in front of you, but this is mainly for the benefit of those that might be watching on video. Sorry? No, we're not reading the budget, it's not sorry. The budget process this year has been rebuilding as the county emerges from the pandemic. And we see where demand for services is needed. As in each year, the priorities and projects are considered and money allocated accordingly to ensure that the council can deliver the essential but also valued services. The town council finances are in good shape due to prudently holding reserves in line with good practice. These have allowed us to continue with all current services without the need to increase the tax this year to cover any deficits. The council are looking to continue with projects including the rollout of the neighbourhood plan objectives, capital projects including furthering the green and environmental agenda, as we replace fleet vehicles with electric vehicles, as well as creating a fund for sustainable initiatives and enhancements in the town. We are proposing new events and targeted activities for young people in the town. And as inflation is increasing, so does the cost of staff salaries, services and products bought by the council. The national staff salary negotiations have resulted in a stalemate, and the council prudently looking to ensure that the budget allows to cover the increase when it is finally agreed. In order to meet the requirements in the budget, I'm recommending that the budget be approved as set out in the papers. We did not increase the council tax last year. Indeed, we slightly reduced the town council's proportion. But this is not sustainable, and with a programme of proposed, we are seeking an annual increase of £4.23, which equates to 4.8% this year, and the parish council proportion of tax. The annual Bandy council tax charge will be £92.34. When broken down, this is a cost per day of 25 or 177 per week. That's an increase of 8p. We believe this is an excellent value for the breadth of services and quality provided by the town council. Inflation in the UK is currently running at 4.6%, with November posting 5.1. Therefore, the proposed increase is not out of line and will ensure the council can deliver the projects and services next year. Thank you, Timothy.
Item 7, we need to consider the minutes of local committees, as shown in the agenda. First one, I'm going to ask Councillor Oak if he would propose his to do with the budget and also one planning.
Thank you. I've got 3 plans on this. If I can propose or please. Planning meeting on the 5th of January, page numbers 129 to 138, minute numbers 170 to 176. Planning meeting on 30th of January, page numbers 139, 177 to 180. And planning meeting on 25th of January, page numbers 145 to 146, minute numbers 194 to 1995. Proposal for second please. Questions?
Have a vote on those ones. And now for Councillor Jackson, if you'd like to propose.
I was unfortunately not at that meeting, so I first of all like to thank my deputy, Councillor Labor, for his hard work on that meeting and for me. So thank you very much for that, Councillor. I'm going to read this out, and I'm going to ask Danny's proposal. It's for the public services held on the 13th of January, pages 140, minutes 181 to 184.
Can I propose it as a true and accurate record? Can I have a seconder?
Second.
Can we have a vote on that, please? Councillor
I too feel that I'll take it to chair the Initiatives and Tourism meeting and my vice chair This did do emergency activities, migrate announcing guideline, and council do need to propose them. So it's for reasons for it that the 13th of January 2022, pages 141, minutes 185 to 188.
Those minutes. Have a second.
I'm happy to second those. Oh, sorry. I'm just following the lead.
Thank you very much indeed. Just catching up a little bit here. So we've covered all of this at the meeting. So we need to. Oh, sorry. I'm terribly sorry.
Thank you. I would like to propose minutes of financial and general purposes committee on the 13th, 2022, pages numbers 142 to 144, minute numbers 189 to 193. One second.
Is there any questions? Right, now, consideration of recommendation of finance and general purposes to formally resolve for the 22-23 financial year town council revenue estimates and the precept made on that Mid-Sussex District Council. The recommendation of the finance and general purposes committee are as set out in the minutes of the final draft budget book, which was issued with the agenda. Can I please pass this to the leader?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to propose one, that the revenue estimates 22-23 as set out in the published draft budget booklet become the Town Council's budget for the 22-23 financial year. Two, that the Town Council's capital programme for 22-23 be laid down as in the published draft budget booklet. Three, that the grants to be named community organisations contained in those papers be approved for release in the 22-23 year, subject to receipt of annual accounts. Four, that the Town Council's estimate payments of £1,373,650 an estimated income of £309,900 in the 22-23 financial year be approved, resulting in the net cost to the Town Council of £163,750. And five, the Council now approve an action precept for the 22-23 financial year, which the committee recommends should be set at £1,063,750, representing an annual council tax increase of 4.8% and £92.34 per banding property, based on a known tax base of £11,592. May I have a seconder? Thank you, Deputy Leader.
Thank you very much. I think I now need to ask, is there anyone who wants to speak? Bearing in mind of dispensation of powers, all at this point, you wish to raise anything where humanly or religious or prejudicial interest is in existence, we will need to ask members to be discussed. So I will certainly want council to have a motion. Councillors are able to ask questions or make points in accordance with the standing orders. I will come back to the leader as the proposal of the motion once everyone has had a chance to speak. Would anybody like to speak?
Oh, sorry. I just to say, it's not personal interest, but I am chairman of Nature Trainsford, and that is one of the recipients of the grants, and I know through the other Trustee Donswell, just in case he's watching.
It's absolutely fine. As said in the meeting, all previous the interests have been declared. It's only if anybody now wants to talk about the detail of the community grant, that you need to declare again. Otherwise, you're absolutely fine.
So I believe that the town leader has the final say. I'm sorry, Councillor.
I was just looking around to see if there's anyone else speaking.
Okay.
I would like to put the case against this budget. I'd like to make two arguments, one on your own grounds and one on my grounds. As you all know, or should know by now, we were elected in 2019 on the promise to keep council tax down. This budget does not do that. It puts council tax up by 4.8%. Now, the leader of the town council will say, but inflation is running at 6%. So in reality, this is a real terms cut to the budget. But the fact still remains that if this 4.8% increase goes through, the real terms value of a Band D precept will be 5% higher in real terms than it was in 2019. It's very clear that council tax has gone up. But the town mayor has put forward a different interpretation of this promise. And that interpretation put forward at the last meeting was keep council tax down means keep council tax down subject to providing a minimum of services. But even on his own interpretation of this promise, the town mayor is still wrong. Because as I have just said, council tax and therefore council spending in real terms has gone up by 5%. More services are being provided, as the leader has outlined in his speech. St. Margaret's Loop is being provided. The funding for the Repair Cafe is being provided. These are all additional services. So it is very clear that this council is not keeping council tax down, subject to providing a minimum of services. It is keep putting council tax up and providing more services. Now, the last interpretation, and probably the one this council favours, is keep council tax down, subject to providing a minimum services, really means, given you get to decide what a minimum of services means, that you can put it up however much you like, because you get to define what you can say, that you define what a minimum of services is. And to me, that just shows that that promise under that interpretation is a total mockery of the promise. The promise is simply and most reasonably understood as meaning keep council tax down in real terms. Do not increase it in real terms. This council has not done that. If it goes ahead by putting council tax up by 4.8% today, it will have put up council tax in real terms by 5%. You are breaking your promise to the electorate to keep council tax down, and even on your own interpretation that you may favour, your argument still fails. So there is no getting out of the fact that you are breaking your promise. And if people were here this evening, they would be very angry. It's just fortunate for you they're not, and they won't watch the video. But I want to make a far more fundamental argument against this budget and indeed council tax more generally. I'm going to say what I really believe, and that is council tax is theft. Theft is taking somebody's property without their consent. This town council takes people's property without their consent, therefore council tax is theft. It's as simple as that. It's the same activity that burglars, robbers and thieves engage in. It's an activity that no organisation within the town engages in. Every other organisation within the town has to gain its funds voluntarily. It has to go, you want our services, we'll take your money, but we're not going to threaten you with jail. But that is what you are as councillors are proposing.
Councillor Amos, can I just interject there slightly? First of all, it's not you, it's we, you're a councillor as well. Secondly, be have a care, please, accusing this council.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to put it on the record that I voted against every single budget that this council has put before, so I exempt myself from the idea that I am the one who is authorising such theft. But it is theft. But I want to address some of the objections that you'll obviously make to this rather radical position. And the first of those is, well, we live in a democracy. I've heard Councillor Osborne make the point before. We live in a democracy and therefore there is consent to council tax, so it's not really theft. But really, the idea that a majority can authorise the seizure of property is total and utter nonsense. If we all went out for dinner, as we had done in the past, let's imagine 20 of us went out for dinner, and at the end the bill was presented to us, and 19 of us voted to put the bill on one person, would that allow the 19 of us to legitimately extract the property from the one? No. I mean, there would be a 95% majority, but none of us would accept that we could extract the property from the individual. And thus it follows, by analogy, that just because the majority of people in East Grinstead have voted for council tax, it does not mean that they have a right to extract people's property. But I hear you say that still doesn't go far enough. Charles, you don't understand how council tax works. As a result of living in East Grinstead, you will say, or I suspect you will say, you accept that you have to pay council tax, like it or lump it. If you don't like it here, you can leave. Essentially, the argument is East Grinstead Town Council is a landlord of East Grinstead, and just as a landlord can say to its tenant, if you don't like it here, you can leave, the Town Council can say, if you don't want to pay the tax, you can leave East Grinstead and go away. But the problem with that argument, which is the basis of most political authority, or rather the basis that most people put forward, is it makes the assumption that the Town Council owns the property on which all individuals stand. But it's very clear to all of us that East Grinstead Town Council doesn't own the property of the individuals in East Grinstead. It doesn't have the right to say like it or lump it. If the tax man comes up to the individual and demands his £1,000 for the services that this town council provides, and indeed the district and the county council, that individual is quite right in saying, bugger off, I don't want to pay for the services.
Councillor Evans, there is no place for this council meeting. And can
I apologise for the bad
can I
language.
please ask you to, you've made your point. We live in a democracy, and in democracy, the majority vote counts.
Okay, well,
That is why, in this council, we have voted as a democracy, and the majority has decided on such.
Well, can I, right,
And that does not mean that individuals have the right to overturn the rights of majority. I'm going to.
No, I want to finish. No,
I'm going to ask you, you have made your point.
I haven't finished.
There is not a time for filibustering.
Not filibustering, you've got 2 hours. If it's filibustering, I've been doing it for the last 10 minutes.
If you will come back and answer briefly
I haven't finished.
your points. No, I'm sure. But you have as far as we're concerned. Can you please sit
Well, this
down?
is the problem with democracy, isn't it? You can just tell people what to do.
No, you're trying to tell everybody what to do. Can you please sit down and let the leader respond?
Well, can I respond to the leader if he puts forward his views? If he mentions my name, I have a right to respond with standing order. Always been point.
Councillor Osborne, you have an objection?
I don't have an objection, Mr. Mayor. I do feel that we're coming to this meeting, there are very few council meetings. We usually offer 15 minutes. There's one member who takes an opposite view to the rest of us. It's no hardship for us to hear him out. That is democracy, which you were talking about just now. Let's give him a chance. We don't have to agree with it.
Very well,
I think we
Councillor
should.
Osborne. I apologise, Councillor Evans. Councillor Osborne's made a very strong point, which I accept, and please carry on.
No, I've got opposite views to that. I think we're just getting an election. There's nothing constructive really about this. It's a hypothetical. And I'd like to propose we move to the vote.
We have a proposal that moves forward. Can I see a second to that motion?
I'd like to second that motion.
Councillor Mrs. Farron seconded that motion. The motion is, let me make it very clear, that we continue with the business. Can I show of hands for that? Sorry, no, this is a vote to carry on, as I just stated. rather than letting councillor Evans carry it. Have a show of hands.
Are we moving to the vote,
We are going to move to the vote. Okay, the proposal is to move to the vote. Okay, sorry, and we have a second for that. I'm terribly sorry, and I'm trying to take everybody's views into consideration. So the proposal is that we move to the vote. Can I see a show of hands? And can I just the rest of the opposed to that? 2, 3, so 4. Motion's carried. Therefore, come back to the leader just to sum up. Sorry. Okay, we are so I'm getting a little bit confused myself. We are moving to the vote for the motion to accept the motion. So can I have a show of hands for that? Right, can I have a show of hands here, please? Under the tab, right,
Let's get the right budget increase.
yes.
We'll do the precept separately, but this is the precept. That's.
Now we're moving to the vote on the precept, which is led by the leader. I'm terribly sorry. Item B is to levy the precept on Mid Sussex District Council. It is required that having determined our budget, we now authorise the levy of the precept. I wish to propose the precept made on Mid Sussex District Council to be paid at 2 equal installments of £531,875 by the 30th of April and again the 30th of September. Thank you very much indeed. Show of hands to accept that.
Isn't there supposed to be some debate on
So,
that? Isn't there supposed to be debate on whether or not to make a precept? If we just approved the budget, haven't we not? And the precept is a separate issue.
very well. Would anybody like to make any comments before we vote on the precept?
I want to hear from people defending this budget. But I'd like to see it also.
Go back to the legal. Okay. And do forgive me, I'm getting a little bit confused by the nutshell. Absolutely.
Right, thank you, Tony. Sorry, I was a bit confused there myself. This increase in the precept, as I've already mentioned before, this budget actually gives good value for money. There's an 8p or increase, and that allows us to carry forward our aspirations for the next financial year. So as I said before, I was going to come to that earlier to respond to Councillor Amos there, and I would like to thank him for his comments. And I would say that the council, to answer your question, are legally established tax, and this is sanctioned by the government and by law is set. So we are taxed. Now the reason why we put up our taxes is not just for the fun of it. Each time we put up tax is for a very good reason, to carry on the town council's business and support our community groups. And I believe Mr. Chambers, the RFO, has actually said that when we recently had the auditors in, and he looked at our finances, he said this town council gives extremely good value for money, and I think we need to take that on board, because that is a very, very good comment. And by the way, I'd like to thank Mr. James for the work he does on finances. I know we're talking about the levy here, the levy precept to campaigns, but I'd just like to highlight what we do for our communities. I remember when I was mayor back in 2015-16, I happened to visit, I'm not sure if it's still going actually, the tadpoles that use the King's Leisure Centre. Now, I went then along there to present a grant check or something. I want to go, said I've got something wet at the same time. But mainly that enables through the wonderful volunteers that do that for nothing in this community. And those disabled children that come out, don't go out hardly at all. Once a week, they can come out, have the benefits of going swimming, mixing with other people of their own age and other disabilities. And to see the look on their faces was, well, it's very emotional. Because that's what this town council does. It supports people like that. It supports the vulnerable groups that would not ever, would otherwise perhaps stay indoors and not go out. This is what this town council does. It supports our voluntary groups. It keeps kids off the streets. It keeps kids away from drugs. And all of our other town councillors, I will fight to keep our community groups afloat with, if we can, with the amount of money we distribute to those groups. That is so important. You ask people, I'm sure many people around this room, when we're going out for by-elections and knocked on people's doors, and you say to them, oh, I've just moved down from Croydon or wherever. How long have you lived on? A couple of years. Why did you move to East Finsbury? Because it's a wonderful place to live. We should take credit for that because it's what we do best. Now, to levy this precept on the district council, when I said to someone recently, once this was in the public domain, we were increasing it by 8 pence a week. They laughed in my face. They said, is that all? And is that all you're increasing it to? £1.77 a week. And they get East Court Live. They get all the other things I've mentioned previously in my legal speech. I've a lot to be proud of, and I'm sure you all sitting around this chamber tonight should feel the same. Thank you, Town Mayor.
Thank you very much. I have 3 people who would like to speak. Let's go to Councillor Whittaker first.
Thank you, Town Mayor. Much was debated at the FGP meeting in January. So I stand by that statement. I'm not going to repeat it. Suffice to say, a couple of things I was, whilst I support Councillor Amos and Councillor Osborne, Councillor Amos should be allowed to make full statement. Disappointed with some of the comments that he's made on record here tonight. I think they should be corrected and an apology due, I have to say, regarding some of the language, Councillor Amos, and you know that you and I are on the same page on a lot of things, but I do take a personal offence, I would say, to some of the comments. So I would ask you to consider that, please, for your conclusions. But in general, coming back to the budget, to be relevant, I hear what the leader says. But we've already established in 2 finance and general committee meetings that the projected spend for this budget to 31st of March 2022 is going to be around about £80,000 under budget. And we're facing a year, particularly, that is an intense increase in cost. We've seen it all around. Inflation, that was mentioned, gas prices literally going through the roof, and other costs. And there are lots, the town could be considered as a working town if you see the amount of cars and the type of cars that are driven out of town, and that's a fair comment. Equally, there are other quite large sections of our community that aren't in that bracket, you know, and that go to food banks and that are struggling, and that will continue to struggle this year. Went to an event last Friday, and where clearly, not very far from here, where you know there is evidence of that. So, on the basis that we are projecting an underspend of £80,000 this year, my personal and professional opinion as a councillor is I don't think we should be putting up the budget by £50,000 or thereabouts, which is the 4.8% increase. I think that could be obviated. So, fortunately, we can't be in position to support the increase of 4.8%.
Thank you very much. Tappy, would you like to respond to?
Thank you, Chairman. What I would like to hear, Mr. Chambers, would mind responding to that question as RFO, because I think you could probably give a clearer understanding on that understanding.
The only comment I would make in the underspend, as I said at the last meeting regarding that, I don't want to talk about a fixed amount. I know I mentioned the £80,000, but it is a very moving figure. We've already had 2 large items of expenditure since that point of time, and I thought those items, for example, were going to be happening in the next financial year. We've just recently purchased a tractor for just under 20,000. So I would anticipate at the moment that underspend is going to be slightly less than £80,000. I think the other point just worth making on there is because of the £150,000 investment into the property fund, though, as I previously have stated, yes, there will be an underspend in this year's budget, but the general reserve, because of that long-term investment in the property fund, the general reserve is going to decrease considerably. So I just think council should be mindful of the level of general reserve that obviously needs to be in line with our policy to be between 3 and 6 months of our reset.
Councillor, would you like to respond to that?
Thank you for the opportunity. Again, we discussed this at FG. I don't want to go over that. Suffice to say that the Deputy Mayor, I think, gave a very crystal explanation of the movement. It's an accounting movement. It's not an actual reduction in reserves. We've still got that money. It's not going anywhere. So the net effect of the current expenditure this year is circa £80,000. So the amount that you say was with the £20,000 bill, that was already budgeted for in capital expenditure from this year's budget, not the budget we're voting on this evening in the current financial year.
Thank you very much. Any further comments on that? When it comes to Deputy Mayor's office.
What I would say is, first of all, repeating some is, first of all, why has been already said, I think taking exception to the language used by Councillor Abos. Under the council tax was introduced and made effective in the first day of 1993 at the Local Government Finance Act. So it's an actual act of parliament, so we're not fees or anything of such. Secondly, the manifesto was written, let's face it, before the pandemic, when a lot of other authorities in the UK and in the West Sussex area are facing serious issues. And with that, as the town leader explained earlier, the town council stepped forward for a number of initiatives to support the residents through that process, but also a number of initiatives and a number of societies, agencies, etc. come forward. St Margaret's Loop, for example, there's clear support for that within the town council, within the residents I believe within the town, and there's a number of other issues that come forward. Initiatives that the residents support and want. So in that background, whilst I take the points you said, there's a wider issue here to be brought in mind. And I think in terms of underspend, overspend, I think we need to bear in mind some of the projects would be on hold, and the revenue is there, the capital budget amount is there to be spent going forward on outstanding projects. So they're my general comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, I'd like to kick off by saying, a big thank you to Dick Slater, Councillor Slater, and the other members of the staff, finance staff, and the chairman, for the work they've put in on producing the budget. We tend to take it for granted, but I can tell you there's a lot of work goes on behind the scenes and stuff. I would like to understand my appreciation too. Although there was one particular point, I didn't agree, he said it's going to cost 8p. And I'm not a D band, I'm a G band, so it's going to cost me at least 11 or 12p. So I'm missing out on that. But on the principle, I've heard the technicalities of this discussion between councillors and I've sat on this council in the past and they've done this trick of holding the preset down. But it catches up with you. You find that if you do that once too often, and even once might be too often, you find that a year later, you've got to put it up and you've got to put it up even more than you would have done if you'd maintained reality, if you like, with the cost of living, etc. So I think it's probably a wise move, although there is a case for what has been said. So I think having the large balances does actually put us in a good position to take any opportunities that may arise. So I support the budget, and I think I'll better sit down before I start getting obnoxious again.
Sorry, would you like to respond? I have noted that you'd like to speak. I'm going to note other people as well. I think we could take a step back a little bit. We've been fine. Sorry about that. Gary.
Yes, what Councillor Osborne was saying, I appreciate your comments there. I'd just like to, so although we putting it up by 4.8% this financial year, I think members must realise that last year we had a 0% preset increase, and that is because East Town Council was very mindful of the pandemic and people struggling with furlough and not being able to work. So I just wanted to briefly remind councillors that we are looking out for our residents, and we try to be fair as possible, whilst also maintaining the aspirations of the town council for the benefit of our residents. Thank you, Chairman.
It's always a mute point, isn't it? It tends to motivate us all. Councillor.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I understand that Councillor Amos would need to take a different point of view, being one of our opposition members, and I understand his views. I understand his views on tax. I do find it very offensive, the language that he's using. I do hope that before we go to the vote, that Councillor Amos will apologise, maybe not for his thoughts, but just for his use of language. I am one of the band D council tax payers that is mentioned in the leader's report at the start of this document. And it's really important that we remember that as well as being councillors, we are also residents. So we also pay and we also receive this benefit. And as a council tax D payer, when it's all broken down, I pay 25 pence a day, £1.77 per week. And for that, I get support that I really value. And I see that support going to my residents that I worry about. Particularly during COVID, the vulnerable residents, this council set up a group that was just amazing in its support for those residents. And that's what our council tax, my 25 pence a day, has gone towards, and I'm really proud of that. We walk up the town and we see the beautiful hanging baskets. They're not needed. At least we don't, people might say they're not. But to me, just to see them brings enormous sense to my well-being, and I feel proud of my town. It's about civic pride. So our hanging baskets are loved by this community. 25 pence. There's so many things that it goes into. We are all experiencing hard times at the moment. I'm struggling, really struggling to pay my bills. But 25 pence from my council tax for this town to give me everything that I need and everything that I value, I pay that gratefully, and I believe my residents do too. And if there's anybody that struggles with that, that's a resident that's watching this, please come and speak to me, because I think once our residents understand where the money comes from and where it goes, they value it. So thank you. I will be supporting this budget.
Thank you very much indeed. I believe that Councillor Reynolds has already called.
Apologise for saying bugger off.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. I have told the people that I will come back to you, the rules of play. I believe that Councillor Sparrow.
I'd say something very similar to Councillor Bennett. I moved here 25 years ago, and I have brought my children up here. And I'm a council taxpayer, and my pennies go to this town. And again, I reiterate how proud I am. My money goes into the town. And you have a family here. You're in a different position, Councillor Reynolds. A lot of us have had our children since the beginning of our children growing up. What the town offers and what it changes as our life changes in the town. And that's what somebody goes, and I'm very proud to be part of it, and I will support this budget. I will also say I do actually work in the public sector and set budgets. And again, we need every penny to be able to school to run the town council. And really, the 4.8% is not a huge rise. I understand the points that you make, and I enjoy listening to you. Unfortunately, we've heard stories before. That's my point. That's why I could actually stop you, because you're not saying something new to us other than what it needs. But that's what we are agreed. What the words that you use as satisfaction. It's all right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe Councillor Dawson.
Yeah, thank you. Just to echo some of those points that Trix made, and I think we're this conversation, perhaps a debate that we would have had if we had moved to the votes previously. And I wouldn't normally have moved to the votes, and I'm very much in favour of members of this council having their say. But unfortunately, just the tone of the language used, I found so disrespectful to the town council and the roles that we do after our residents. And I didn't know where the conversation was going to go, so I thought on that occasion it was best to move to the votes of the church without us to do it. And now I feel we are engaging a bit later. Some people already fancied, but I will be voting in favour for 3 steps. And thank you very much for the work.
Thank you very much. I believe that Councillor Evans and not the reason for that is that you have quite a bit of time to do it. I think everybody's had their chance to speak. So, sorry. Oh, sorry, I've been reminded that you haven't spoken on this particular motion. I'm sure you would have told me that, Councillor. In which case, go ahead.
If you're all so pleased with council tax and you all think it's such good value for money, why do you insist upon threatening people with jail if they don't pay it? Because that's what you're ultimately wanting to do with this budget. Council tax and its payment is ultimately enforced by threatening people with jail. If somebody doesn't pay council tax, somebody comes knocking on the door, and after a while, or after going through a few processes, it's pay up or we'll stick you in jail.
That is quite abusive, threatening, but that tends to suggest that this council uses threatening behaviour. I'll ask you to continue, but please can you relax?
The point has been made, and I stand by it. Now, you have objected to me calling you thieves. An argument has been made by Councillor Peacock for that not being the case. And I appreciate an argument being put forward. And he has essentially argued that because councils and governments define property rights, if a council says this is ours, it no longer becomes the property of the individual, and as a result, it's not thieving. I suspect it's the same kind of argument the Soviets was used when they stripped the kulaks from their land because the Soviets controlled the laws that dictated land ownership. So the idea that positive law is to dictate property rights and therefore you can define what is and is not theft is absolutely ridiculous. But it's very clear from this evening that ultimately your arguments rest on it's for the greater good of the community. This council and taking people's property is for the greater good of the community. And I find that a reprehensible idea. The idea that you can take people's property without their consent, and that's what you're doing, and none of you have denied it. You've all said, oh, how can you call me this? But none of you have denied that council tax takes people's property without their consent, which is, of course, the definition of theft. None of you have denied that. What you've fallen back on, ultimately, is Councillor Sweatman's argument that it's for the greater good, and I totally reject that. If a robber were to take £1,000 and he was to give it to Oxfam or the tadpoles perhaps, that wouldn't make his action right. And just as his action would not be right as if he gave his money that he had stolen to the tadpoles, neither is this council threatening individuals with jail in order to get property a legitimate action. So I will conclude what I say by saying this. This council must stop stealing the property of the public. It must stop threatening individuals with jail. You must reject this budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tell me, please.
If I may, I think this is getting out of hand now. I think the town area, which respects, don't want my this is getting a bit difficult at the moment.
I try to be fair to it.
But what I will say in response to Councillor Aylers, Mid Sussex District Council is a tax collecting authority. Now, and I'm sure other district council members sit around this table, I've never heard of anyone going to jail. People sometimes, through not paying into council tax. Sometimes if people have difficulties, there's measures that are put in place to help people. And I sort of have to resent that because people don't pay their council tax, when you say they go to jail. That's not the case. I've never heard of it. So thank you, Tim.
I'm going to actually call the vote now. Being proposed, it's been seconded. Loads of people have plenty of chance to talk. I've been reminded by our officer, the town clerk, that this was mandatory, so please forgive me. But I would like to say a personal comment on that. I was touched by what the councillors said. That is another thing. We're not only here to do such lovely services. So we're moving to the vote. Will those in favour please raise your hand? That is carried. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to be swiftly on. The risk register. Thank you very much indeed. You will appreciate it's been quite a difficult meeting, so I'm trying to keep my head with you. The risk register. The risk register has been updated by Mr. James and is here for adoptions. The council are required to review it annually. I would like to propose and ask for a second that we accept the revised or the updated risk register. Thank you very much indeed, Deputy Town Man. And would anybody like to ask anybody any questions on the risk register? Councillor.
Thank you, Tony. Just a couple of brief ones. The cyber attack is mentioned quite a lot these days. I believe it's included in the risk register. Mr. Chairman, can I just ask what is the actual practical plan if we have a cyber attack?
Maybe we'll pass that on to. Oh, you might.
As IT, I'll answer this one. We have a lot of processes now regarding this. As you quite rightly said, Councillor, it is a risk, especially to local governments. There is a risk at the moment especially from Eastern European countries, Chinese countries trying to access local government service. What we've put in place is a dedicated server that deals with this remotely, as well as antivirus software on our server that's physical, so physical server, and our cloud-based one. That's now backed up every 12 hours. So if we had a cyber attack and they tried to use that as ransom, we would be able to back our data up to 12 hours in advance. That means that nothing that we've done past 12 hours would ever be lost. In regards to any cyber attacks coming in from emails, we currently use FuseMail, which is a software which basically detects any sort of bug that was to enter the system. This is immediately rejected. We are now looking, as the risk register actually goes on to say, to take this and actually upgrade it to the brand new 365 model, which is the latest equipment and has all of that built into the email software. And we're hoping to do that in April, along with the budget that's just been decided.
Thank you very much. That's very constant. Okay, so we're going to move to the vote for accepting the risk register. And I'm going to show that, please. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, everybody, for your time, attention tonight, and for your attendance tonight. Everybody. Thank you so much. The next meeting of the town council will be on the 4th of April. You invite closing meetings at 1300.